It started with a cone. One little orange cone. Someone, most likely Karen from across the street, thought that putting it behind my car would keep me from leaving my own driveway. And it worked. That morning I was late to my daughter's piano recital because of a cone. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My wife, Sophia, peeked through the blinds and whispered, "It's them again." And I just sat there, stunned. I had lived in this neighborhood for 6 years. I'd built this house from scratch, poured the concrete with my own hands. And yet, here I was, locked in by HOA tyranny and neighborhood entitlement. Over nothing more than where I parked my truck. My truck is my livelihood. I run a performance shop, custom car builds, track tune suspension, old school rebuilds. It's not just a business. It's what kept me sane after I lost my brother. In the service, cars were our bond. He taught me to fix clutches before I even learned long division. He died on duty, and I swore I'd never waste a day doing something I hated. So I built this life. And now, Karen was trying to suffocate it with HOA bylaws and passive-aggressive notes. The absurdity escalated slowly. First, it was a complaint about engine noise, even though the cars were inside the garage by 7 p.m. Then it was visual. Disruption because I had a lift in my backyard, out of sight, behind an 8-foot privacy fence. I complied. I stayed quiet. I even painted the fence to match the rest of the neighborhood, hoping it would buy me some peace. But peace isn't what they wanted. I remember when Sophia found our mailbox stuffed with complaint letters not from the HOA, but anonymous neighbors. "You're bringing down the value of our neighborhood. This isn't a junkyard. Why don't you build a track elsewhere if you love racing so much?" And then the driveway blockade started. First cones, then cars. My daughter once came home from school in tears because her school bus couldn't pull up, and she had to walk a block. In the rain. She was 8 one night. I came home from a client drop-off and found my driveway completely blocked. Karen's teenage son had parked his Camaro right across my entryway, and when I knocked on their door, he laughed in my face. "This ain't NASCAR, man. Get a real job." That night, something broke in me. I didn't sleep. I sat in the garage with a wrench in one hand and my brother's dog tags in the other. I thought about everything. The years of bending over backwards to avoid conflict, the humiliation, the disrespect. I didn't deserve this. My family didn't deserve this. That's when the idea hit me. If they didn't want me parking in my driveway, I wouldn't. If they hated my cars so much, they'd never see them again. If they wanted me out of there, sight, fine, I'd disappear in the loudest, most unforgettable way possible. I would build my own private racing track. Right behind my house? Now before you think, how's that even possible? Hear me out. I had 3 acres of undeveloped land just behind my property, technically mine. Bought it during the market dip years ago as an investment. It had been sitting untouched all this time until now. The next morning, I walked that land from end to end. I sketched out curves in the dirt with a stick like a kid drawing race lines in a sandbox. Called a friend who worked in excavation. He owed me a favor. By noon, we had a plan. But plans don't stay secret for long in neighborhoods like this. By day 2, Karen was already pacing on her porch, filming with her phone. She must have called the HOA within minutes because I got an email that afternoon. Cease construction immediately. No permits filed. Violation of community standards. Here's the thing. They didn't realize the lot wasn't under HOA jurisdiction. It wasn't zoned residential. It was technically commercial fringe property, grandfathered in from decades back. I called my lawyer just to be safe. He confirmed it. I could do whatever I wanted as long as I wasn't building homes or running a business. I wasn't. I was building a track for myself, for my family, for peace. The next few weeks were brutal, not just because of the work it was backbreaking, sure, but because of the emotional toll. Sophia kept asking, "Are we really doing this?" She was scared, not of the track, but of the fallout, of living with a target on our backs. And it wasn't just fear. There were days I questioned everything, like the day we got a fine notice from the city. Turns out Karen had reported us for illegal grading. Even though everything was above board, we still had to go downtown, fill out papers. and plead our case like criminals. But every time I wanted to quit, I remembered that rainy day my daughter stood outside the block driveway soaked and crying. I remembered my brother who used to say, "If they're going to hate you, at least give them a reason." And slowly, the track began to take shape. We dug out the curves, banked the corners, laid down gravel. My friend brought in compactors. Studied old racing diagrams like I was cramming for finals. I wanted this track to be more than revenge. I wanted it to be beautiful. And one night, after the first loop was complete, I stood at the edge of the hill and cried, because for the first time in years, I felt free. That weekend, I took my daughter. Out in the Mustang, we wore helmets. We went slow. Just a loop. But she screamed with laughter. "Daddy, it's like a roller coaster." We came back to find Karen and her husband standing at the fence line, red in the face. "This isn't a racetrack. You're disturbing the peace." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about blocked driveways anymore. It was about control. About neighbors who thought they could dictate your worth by the size of your lawn or the quietness of your muffler. I had one message for them, loud and clear. I wasn't going anywhere, but the truth is, the noise was only beginning. So if you've ever felt silenced, if you've ever been bullied by people who think power comes from titles or fences or anonymous complaint letters, watch till the end. Because I promise you, this story doesn't end the way they hoped. And what came next? Even I couldn't have predicted. You'd think the rumble of tires and the joy of a father-daughter ride would be harmless. But when I stepped out of the Mustang that evening, I was served a formal notice, certified, from the county zoning office, noise violation complaint. Ongoing community disruption, review pending. I remember staring at the paper like it was a death sentence. Sophia read it 3 times before folding it neatly and putting it in the drawer, like if we hit it, the chaos would stop. But it didn't. Bye. The next morning, HOA board members were walking along the fence line like buzzards circling a wounded deer. Cameras, clipboards. Karen brought coffee for them, like she was hosting a brunch party. They weren't just angry, or preparing for war. But here's what they didn't realize. I had already been at war long before the first tire hit dirt, you see. Years ago, before the house, before the shop, before our daughter, I lived. In my car for 3 months after getting medically discharged. I lost everything when I came back. My job, my identity, my purpose. It was my brother's old Impala that kept me from completely slipping off the edge. I rebuilt it in parking lots. Slept in the back seat. That car didn't just carry MIT, healed me. And the reason I'm telling you this now is because people like Karen, they don't understand what it means to rebuild from nothing. They've never watched their life fall apart bolt by bolt and had to fight to put it back together. They see a man building a track and assume it's arrogance. They don't see the pain behind the asphalt. So when I got that noise violation, I didn't flinch. I lawyered up my lawyer, a calm, no-nonsense woman named Camille, reviewed the case and simply said, "They're going to try everything, but if you keep everything documented, they'll burn out before you do." She was right. The next week, I installed noise barriers, high-grade sound baffles along the fencing. I adjusted the hours of operation, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., weekends only. I even reached out to an acoustic engineer to test the decibel levels. All legal, all defensible. But did it matter? Out. Because this wasn't about noise. It never was. It became clear when they showed up with a drone. Yeah, a drone. Hovering over my backyard, filming my daughter playing near the track. That was the moment everything shifted. Sophia saw it first. Screamed. I sprinted outside and saw it hovering, maybe 20 feet above us. I picked up a rock without even thinking and nailed it down. It went. It's crashing into the bushes. A police cruiser pulled up an hour later. Apparently property destruction was now on my record. But I showed the footage from our Ring camera. The officer, a younger guy, nodded and whispered before leaving, "They're trying to break you, man. Don't let them." That night, I stayed up late in the garage again, just like the old days. I sat next to the Impala, and I remembered something my brother once told me. After a particularly bad day on base, if you can't go through the front door, build your own damn house. That's when I decided I wasn't just going to finish the track. I was going to make it a masterpiece, I spent the next month pouring myself into it. I redesigned the course to flow like a ribbon, with fast sweepers, tight chicanes, and a back straight that let you breathe. I added a shaded picnic area for family rides, corner named after my daughter, Emma's Bend, and planted a line of maple trees along the outer fence to block the HOA's view entirely, and then I held an opening, not a party, not a protest, a memorial lap, one car. One lap. In my brother's rebuilt Impala, I invited only a few close friends, fellow veterans. My wife, my daughter. I placed a single folding chair on the grass, a photo of him in uniform on the seat. When I started, that engine, the whole neighborhood watched, but this time, no one said a word. Some recorded it. But Karen stood at her window with her arms crossed, face blank like stone. The silence afterward was louder than the engine. That night, I sat with Sophia and Emma on the porch. For a moment, we believed it was over. That maybe, just maybe even, the HOA could feel something human, but it wasn't over. The next week, I got a lawsuit, not just a complaint. A full civil suit. Emotional distress. Community nuisance. Environmental damage. Filed by the HOA president herself, Karen. I couldn't believe it. I stood in the kitchen holding the papers like they were wet with acid. Emma asked me, "Are they going to take our house, Daddy?" My knees nearly buckled. That's the thing they never warn you about when you build something real, how much it hurts when someone tries to rip it away. But Camille, my lawyer, told me something that changed everything. They messed up, she said calmly. The land you built on? I found the original deed history. It wasn't just commercial, it was classified under historical agricultural exemption. You know what that means? Shook my head. She smiled. It means they can't touch you. Not only that, you can sue them back for harassment.
And my heart
Nearly stopped. I had been so caught up in surviving. I never realized I was holding the sword too, so we countersued. Harassment, trespassing, invasion of privacy, emotional distress, illegal drone surveillance. And here's where the story starts flipping. Because once we filed, neighbors who had stayed quiet for years, people we thought were against you, he started coming forward. One couple told us, Karen, fine them $500 for painting their shutters off-white instead of beige. Another said they're autistic. Son was banned from chalk drawings on the sidewalk because it was graffiti. An elderly man admitted Karen had tried to report him for yard neglect while he was undergoing chemo. It was like the floodgates opened. People weren't just tired of Karen, they were scared of her. But now with our lawsuit out there, they finally had a crack to slip through. We organized a meeting, not through the HOA, but at a local community center. We called it Neighborhood Voices. 30 families showed up, and for the first time, we weren't just talking about tracks or driveways. We were talking about fairness, about freedom, about reclaiming our spaces from people who use rules as weapons. The room was electric. People cried, laughed, shared stories they had bottled up for years. It was more than a meeting. It was a revolution. And here's the twist you didn't see coming. 1 week later, Karen stepped down. She resigned as HOA president. No press, no apology. Just a quiet notice emailed out with the subject line, leadership transition. Some say it was because she knew she was going to lose the lawsuit. Others say it was because, for the first time, she looked around and saw a neighborhood no longer afraid of her but me. I think she left because she realized something terrifying. I didn't just build a racetrack. I built a community. And the people who once rolled their eyes at my loud cars were now cheering from the sidelines. That weekend, we held the first track. Family Day. People brought folding chairs, lemonade, their kids. I gave rides. I let one little boy with leukemia ride shotgun in my brother's Impala. His mom cried. I cried. Sophia whispered, "You did it." But the truth is, I didn't. We did this story, this entire journey. It wasn't just about a blocked driveway. It was about standing your ground when no one else will, about turning pain into power, about finding your voice when others try to mute you. And if you're watching this thinking, that could never be me, you're wrong. You don't need a racetrack. You need courage. So whatever you're facing, whatever gate they're closing, in your life, build your own damn road. And if this story means something to you, stick around, because the final chapter, it's something no one saw coming. Watch till the end. 3 days after Karen resigned, a black SUV parked across from our driveway. It didn't belong to any of the neighbors. It didn't move. The windows were tinted so dark, I couldn't see if anyone was inside. At first, I brushed it off. Probably someone visiting. But the next morning it was still there. Different position. Same SUV. Then again the day after. And on the fourth morning, I found a note taped to my front gate. Keep the noise down. Your past isn't buried as deep as you think. No signature. It's just those words. The world slowed down. My hands trembled. As I read it again and again, heart-pounding Sophia came outside and found me standing there like a statue. "What's wrong?" she asked, and I didn't know what to say, because this wasn't about the HOA anymore. It felt different, personal. I hadn't told her everything about my past, about the things I'd seen, the people I'd dealt with after the military. Some things were better left quiet. But now someone was digging. That night, I stayed up late again in the garage. But this time, I wasn't thinking about cars. I was thinking about enemies, about ghosts, about how far people would go to shut you down once they realized they couldn't scare you anymore. And that's when I realized I was finally becoming a threat. Not because of the track, but because I didn't back down. I called Camille and told her about the note. She went quiet for a moment and then said, "There's something I didn't tell you. I got a strange email yesterday. No name, just a scanned document. An old citation from your military record. Something that's supposed to be sealed." My stomach dropped. Whoever was behind this, they were playing dirty. But you know what? So could I. If you've ever been hunted by whispers, if you've ever had your past used like a weapon, you know the feeling. It's not just fear, it's shame. Even when you've done nothing wrong, the weight of someone dragging it into the light can feel like a punch in the ribs. But here's the truth. I want you to remember, what you've survived doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous to the people who thrive on control. So I decided to fight fire with fire. The next morning, I hired a private investigator. His name was Leo, retired cop. Looked like someone who'd bench press refrigerators. Within 24 hours, he had footage from a street cam 2 blocks away. Showed the SUV following a man from a local city council meeting to my street. That man, the new HOA president Karen had, stepped down, but her replacement was even worse. A man named Harvey Glass. Cold. Corporate. Always wore suits even on trash day. Rumor was he used to work in city development. No one really knew how he got voted, and some suspected he wasn't even a homeowner, just a proxy. Leo dug deeper. Turns out Harvey wasn't just connected to city council. He had ties to a development firm. And that firm? They'd been lobbying for months to rezone the outer edge of our neighborhood, including my land. That's when it all clicked. This was never about noise. This wasn't about Karen's son or blocked driveways or engine sounds. This was about money. My land was sitting right in the middle of a proposed commercial corridor. And Harvey's company, they wanted to turn it into luxury condos. But I stood in the way. I was the crack in their plan. They were trying to smoke me out quietly, legally, any way they could. I remember standing in the middle of the track, staring at the sky and laughing, because for the first time in this whole mess, felt clarity. I finally understood what I was fighting, and it wasn't just Karen anymore. It was a system. A system that told you to keep quiet. Stay small, obey, sign here, pay that. Don't ask questions. But I didn't serve this country just to come home and bow to paper tyrants and sweater vests. I called Camille. We started the paperwork to officially designate my land as a private, recreational memorial space. Because of my brother. Because of the community we had built. We named it after him, the Cole Memorial Circuit. And that designation, it made my land untouchable, unzonable, undevelopable, unbuyable. And Harvey lost his mind. 2 days later, I found my fence vandalized. Spray paint, slurs, threats. They didn't even try to hide it anymore. But here's where things flipped. One of the neighbors, Mr. Patterson, a soft-spoken widower, caught it on his security camera. Clear footage, faces visible. One of them, Harvey's assistant. We pressed charges. It made the local news. And suddenly, the HOA had bigger problems. A private track owner being harassed by corrupt board members. That's the kind of story reporters dream about. Sophia and I were interviewed by a local station. Emma sat between us, holding a toy car and smiling shyly at the camera. And you know what happened? The community started showing up. People brought snacks, donated to help maintain the track. Teens volunteered to help keep it clean. A local war vet asked if he could install a small flagpole by the entrance. I said yes and cried when he raised it. But Harvey wasn't done. He filed one last lawsuit, a big one, alleging that my land was causing irreparable harm to the community's image. It was laughable, but dangerous. Because if he won a win on technicalities, I could lose everything. The day of the court hearing, I wore my brother's dog tags under my shirt. The courtroom was half empty, except for one row, where over 30 neighbors sat, arms folded, backs straight, watching. Even Karen was there. Not with Harvey, with us. Camille made her case like a hurricane. She showed the deed history, the harassment evidence, the video footage. She told the judge, this is not just about land. This is about legacy. And when Harvey's lawyer stood up, he stammered. He had nothing. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice, which means Harvey couldn't come back. Not now. Not ever. When we walked out of that courtroom, I felt 10 feet tall. Not because we won, but because we never gave up. I hugged Sophia. I lifted Emma in the air. I thanked every single neighbor, and then I did something I'd been planning for months. I opened the gates to everyone. The Cole Memorial Circuit became a place for more than just racing. It became a symbol. A place where bullied kids could ride bikes in peace, where vets could talk cars and find healing, where working-class families didn't need $1 million to feel adrenaline in their veins. It became more than a track. It became hope, and that trite. There is what they never saw coming. So if you're watching this, still doubting, still wondering if you should keep watching, ... let me speak directly to you. Watch till the end, because what happens next? It changed everything. 1 year after I first saw that orange cone behind my truck, we stood in the heart of the Cole Memorial Circuit as engines roared and kids laughed underneath a sky filled with red, white, and blue streamers. What started as revenge had become something far bigger, something none of us could have imagined. But the truth is, it didn't happen overnight. Even after Harvey lost in court, he didn't disappear quietly. Corrupt people rarely do. He tried to rally what was left of the HOA board. He sent letters to city zoning again, even tried to smear my name online, fabricating stories about noise pollution, illegal street racing, even child endangerment. Because my daughter once rode in the Mustang with me, it hurt. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. But this time, I wasn't alone. One by one, the neighborhood pushed back. Not just with words, but with action. Miss Dolores, who once threatened to call the city over my fence paint, she brought her church group over to help us repaint the picnic area. The retired Marine down the block who never said a word. He donated custom signage for the track with my brother's name carved into the wood. Even Karen, she came by one morning with her arms full of cupcakes and tears in her eyes. I didn't realize what I had become, she said. I just wanted to feel important. And I thought power would get me that. We didn't hug, but we did sit on the porch that day. She watched Emma race past in her little go-kart and whispered, "She looks happy." "She is," I replied. And then she said something that stuck with me. "You built something real." I tried to destroy it because I didn't know how to build anything myself. That broke me a little. Because that's what this was all along, wasn't it? People trying to control what they don't understand, projecting their fear of freedom onto others, turning structure into cages, mistaking order for safety. But now, the chains were off, and with that freedom came something I never expected, an invitation from Estate Racing Organization. They had seen the local news coverage, read the human interest stories. They wanted to partner. They offered to help convert the Cole Memorial Circuit into a certified amateur racing venue, family-friendly, veteran-operated, and free to neighborhood youth. At first I laughed. Me, a guy who built a track out of anger and grief? But Sophia put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You didn't build this for revenge. You built it to heal. And now it's healing others too." We said yes, but we did it our way. We made 3 rules. Rule 1, every kid rides for free. Doesn't matter who they are or where they come from. Rule 2, no politics on the property. No HOA flyers, no board meetings, just engines and joy. Rule 3, every lap honors someone, whether it's a veteran, a teacher, a parent, battling cancer. We dedicate each weekend to a story that matters, and slowly, the Cole Memorial Circuit became something people traveled to see. We had local schools, bringing students for STEM field trips. We held car therapy sessions. For vets with PTSD, we even held a Father's Day race where dads raced with their sons and daughters. But through it all, one moment stands above the rest. It was late fall. Leaves were burning orange and red across the trees. Emma came home from school with a flyer in her backpack. Career Day brings someone who inspires you. She wanted to bring me now. I've stood in courtrooms. I've faced off with billion-dollar firms. I've argued with police, lawyers, developers, and HOA board tyrants. But standing in front of a room full of third graders is terrifying. Still, I went. I brought a few pictures of the track, told them about how cars can teach you patience, precision, and power. I showed them a photo of my brother. I said he taught me how to build, taught me that even broken things can race again. At the end, one little girl raised her hand. "Were you scared when they tried to take it from you?" I paused, looked around the room. For a second, I wasn't in a classroom. I was standing in the garage again, clutching dog tags. With the weight of the world pressing down, "Yes," I said. "I was scared every day." She blinked. "So why didn't you stop?" I smiled. Because I wanted my daughter to grow up knowing that some things are worth protecting if you're scared. Especially if you're scared. When I got home that night, I found Emma in the garage sitting in the Mustang. "Did I embarrass you?" I asked. She shook her head. "You made me proud. I'll never forget those words. Because in the end, that's what all this was about. Not about driveways, not about cars, not even about racing. It was about legacy, about showing the next generation that power doesn't come from rules. It comes from standing when others tell you to sit, from building when others tear down, from loving something enough to fight for it. And if you're still watching, if you made it this far, I want to tell you something. You're part of this story now. Because the truth is, this isn't just my battle. There are people just like you right now, being boxed in, silenced, shamed, bullied by boards, corporations, bureaucrats, or neighbors with too much time and too little heart. And maybe you've been sitting in silence, maybe. You've been thinking, "I can't fight them, not strong enough." But I'm here to tell you, you are. You just need to take the first swing. Put up the first wall, turn the first wrench, stand your ground and say, "Not today." Because they can block your driveway, but they can't block your spirit. And they can't stop you from paving your own road wherever it leads. So if this story meant something to you, don't just scroll past it. Share it. Tell someone. Be someone's spark. Because you never know when your fight will become someone else's freedom. And if you ever find yourself in a storm, remember this. The road you build with pain can become someone else's path to healing. Now go drive it like you stole. Hey, thanks for watching. Please do comment, like, share, and subscribe *.